Good afternoon, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first of the Lockjack GSB Business Roundtable series. Today, we will be discussing the future of work and sustainable Caribbean society. I am Dr. Sookram, your moderator for this session. So as we know, COVID-19 has affected organizations in ways we didn't even imagine. It has lasted longer than anyone would have initially guessed, and it's still going on. On an ongoing basis, I see people disgruntled with services of companies, even after being in this for almost a year and a half. And it really leads me to wonder, where's the mindset of organizations? Are they holding out until it's finished? Is it just too much of an investment? Or have they made that full transition to being online, or what we call working from home? I know some of the thoughts that have been circling in academia and the business community are things like, what does this full transition entail? Can an organization work this way indefinitely? Do organizations want to return to normal if and when this is over? What's happening with work culture, mindset, ethics? Does it still exist in the online realm? And in what way? Is the work environment still an enabling one? What are management issues and responsibility looking like now? What's the difference between working from home and working from home through COVID-19? Is an invasion of privacy an issue? Are people prepared for others to see their homes or their work set up at home? Is this being taken into consideration? What are the new hours of work? What do they look like? Are there any? How has working from home affected one's ability to monitor and assess performance? So in thinking about the future of work in the Caribbean, we've brought together three wonderful panelists who are rich in experience and which share their different perspectives. So today you'll be engaging with myself. As I mentioned, I'm Dr. Sookram. I have been a full-time faculty member with the Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business since January 2016. As a staff member, I've been with the school since January 2008. I hold a PhD in Human Resource Management from Coventry University, United Kingdom, with a focus on entrepreneurship development, and I have over 17 years of industry experience. We also have with us Dr. Paula Thomas, Chief Engagement Officer at People-Centric Consulting. So research and practice is geared towards the economic development of Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean region. Using the principles of theory and business psychology, she helps business leaders to increase value through their people. We also have Mr. Curt Wellington, an adjunct member, faculty, and consultant at the Arthur Lockjack for the past 20 years. He lectures in strategic human resource management. And just as a side note, Curt was also one of my lecturers at the school. He also lectures in organizational behavior and development. The focus of his training and consultant practice is on improving individual and organizational performance through training and development and organizational development and change initiatives. And finally, we have Dr. Sheppard, Chief Executive Officer of the Tobago Hospitality and Tourism Institute. His role there is to transform the institute to become the premier tertiary education institute in Tobago and subsequently to become the University of Tobago. Prior to that, he was Director of Human Resources of the St. Augustine campus of the University of the West Indies. So ladies and gentlemen, I'll take this opportunity to hand you over to our first panelist, Mr. Curt Wellington. Curt, sorry, can you unmute your mic? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So good afternoon, all. And welcome to this discussion on where we go beyond this period of the pandemic. There are a couple of things that we could agree on. One of which is that we will not go back to the normal that we have been accustomed to. And instead, we are facing the prospect of heading into a new normal. We know that government will not have the resources to stimulate the economy in the ways that they have done in the past. And even if they do, we know that such initiatives will probably be unsustainable. The private sector, therefore, will have to step up. The private sector will have to move not merely as an engine of growth, but as creators of value, value for the society and for themselves. My focus, therefore, is on how do we help to create sustainable organizations as we look beyond this period of the pandemic. The thing is, how do we tap into the creativity of our people to ensure the sustainability of organizations? And that's, for me, really is the question, that we bring people into the equation to focus on the sustainability of the organization that has to create value. And so in doing that, I want us to look at three things: mission, meaning, and yes, money. We have to look at all three. So we are currently participating in what I would call the dress rehearsal for the organizations that we're going to lead tomorrow. And what can we do differently? You know, I talked about the mission. And all organizations that I go into can point to something they call the mission statement. But are they on mission? Usually the answer is no. The statement is something that hangs on a wall. Maybe we see it in some documents somewhere, and then people go to work. They go to work to do what they have to do to earn. And so is it that we are talking about? No. What we are talking about is creating solutions, that we have to move from a focus on products and service for the sake of products and service to finding solutions for the people that we serve. So we have to be much more engaged to our customers and our customer base if we have to help them to find solutions. The question is, who will those people be? We know that in today's environment, having to rely on the digital technology, the virtual environment, has pushed a lot of people into using the technologies that are available. And so chances that they will drop all of that at the end of this and come running back to yesterday would be kind of pushing it a little bit much. So we're looking at a new client, perhaps the same client with different behavior and having different needs. Who will those people be and what will those needs be that we are going to satisfy? What will be our value proposition? And I'm saying all of that because we bring people, or we have employees who we bring into our environment. And each and every environment is unique. It's different. But how do we value the differences? What kind of onboarding takes place so that people understand that they're here not just to do a job, but really to participate in the provision of solutions? And so the orientation has to shift. This gives us an opportunity for reset and to refocus. But to do that, people have to find meaning. You know, not just come to work to make money for somebody else or to make money for themselves, but how do we use the lens of our disciplines to help the organization to navigate a very difficult environment and achieve the objectives that they want to. So again, just like the mission, we see people having excellent vision statements. But again, what does it mean? It's like a slogan, you know, it's like we're branding something. But what does it mean to the people in the organization? How do we engage them if there's no meaning, no purpose in what we do? So we don't hire people to show up and work or be on the job for 8 hours and, you know, that is it. that is not finding meaning. And so it's not about simply coming and working hard, but really, how do we focus the organization so that over the long term, our organizations will thrive and survive? But finding meaning is not just the purview of the employee. That's what managers have to have. How do we engage our workers? I've had people call to find out in this virtual environment thing, how do we ensure that they're always logged on? That when I need them, I can get them. But hear what? Managers have to do a lot of stuff differently in this environment. You can't manage in the virtual environment just as you did in the physical environment. You have to realize that people are not going to be sitting at home staring at a screen for however long and waiting for somebody to call them and tell them what to do. So the things that we used to call the soft skills in HR now become very, very critical in today's environment. Managing conversations, the interpersonal skills. So looking at not just presence online, but the quality of output that we're going. That's the business of management. How do we plan performance? How do we engage people in a way that their deliverables are met? How are we clear on this? How do we support them? You ask people to fall in line and to shift it onto an online environment. But do we understand what bandwidth is like in the area? Do we understand the issues that they have with children at home and many people using the devices at the same time? It doesn't mean that they're not committed, but how can we better engage the process? How can we help people to train up so that we can use technologies more efficiently? And so for us, things like performance planning, performance support, providing feedback as you monitor performance, having your dashboard of indicators so that, we're not just having talk shops as we have meetings. People complain that they're being called on meeting after meeting after meeting, and then they still have to go out and do the work. So it's a question of organization and reorganization. So for us, how do we restructure to meet this new environment? The issue of discipline also comes into focus. And many people say, well, the unions. No, not the unions, that's us. Our employees don't work with the unions, they work with us. So we will have to revisit our policy environment. We have to revisit our job descriptions and job specifications. We have to focus a lot on competencies rather than certification. And as we do that, we begin the process of bringing people up together to deliver the value that we have. And only then can we consider the money. Money is important. It is the thing that makes the business survive. We can't survive without a customer, and the customer wouldn't be there without an employee. And so for managers today, you're focused on your mission, revisiting the mission, thinking about what business are we in and how do we create value. That we can't rely on government to do everything. Today, it's up to us. And so I will pause there for the while. Thank John for allowing me to introduce these few thoughts, and I look forward to engaging you as we go forward. Back over to you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Wellington. And it's really refreshing to, be reminded of our place and our role and responsibility as an organization where our employees stand. Just a reminder, guys, what I will do is we'll take questions after our panelists have spoken and start the discussions then. So I'll pass you on now to Dr. Stephen Sheppard.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Dr. Sookram. Good afternoon, everyone. So we are in COVID time, and we are worried about that. But even before COVID, we are living through or have been living through a fundamental transformation in the way we work. Automation and thinking machines are replacing human tasks and jobs. and changing the skills that organizations are looking for in people, as Curt said a while ago. And these artificial intelligence technologies, they are transforming manufacturing, they are transforming corporate work and retail businesses, they're providing new opportunities for companies to explore, and they are posing major threats to those that do not adapt. The stark reality is that decision tree-based jobs, for example, any jobs that follow a set path, such as if this, then that, are going to be replaced by computers and robot-type devices. The digital age is going to free us up from the mundane, the rote, the boring, and open new vistas of imagination, creativity, and productivity as never seen before. Amazon and Alibaba, for example, names that we know well, they are technology-based companies. They are, however, not killing other retail outlets any more than the other businesses did years ago. These companies are forcing retailers to rethink their value proposition and to look for new ways to entice and attract customers. Consumers have spoken. We love the ease, the speed, the cost, the one click to buy, and everything else about the online shopping experience. To wage war against their success is modern day Ludditism. We may remember that the Luddite was a term used to describe textile workers in England at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. People who protested mechanization for fear that machines would replace the jobs that they were doing by hand. In their attempt to stop the Industrial Revolution, they smashed machines that were on the way to factories, they burned factories, and they even killed the factory owners who purchased machines to replace human labor. Obviously, the Luddites were not able to stop the Industrial Revolution. Therefore, we are today in technology that is automating and increasing efficiency. The anti-technology fight continues though. We know about Uber. Uber Technologies has touched a raw nerve by bringing technological advances to transportation services. Uber customers, for example, order and pay for a taxi with its application on their smartphones. So instead of having taxis who prowl the streets of cities looking for passengers, Uber links smartphone GPS to locate app users and have a nearby car pick them up. Traditional taxis have retorted that Uber is an all-out assault on their profession, their livelihoods, and that these big companies are coming in and not playing by the rules. We will recall that Uber left Trinidad and Tobago in May 2018, citing a lack of a proper environment for innovation and technology to thrive in this country. We may also recall that in 2014, taxi drivers were protesting against Uber all over Europe, causing traffic jams, denying service, and generally wreaking havoc. Many US states have also been debating outlawing Uber to protect local taxi drivers. Now, we know that protectionism deters innovation, holds back a society and an economy. And yes, there will be some short-term pain, but they will adapt. Now, with regard to the self-driving vehicles that we've been hearing about, in New York, the Upstate Transportation Association and the Independent Drivers Guild are both pressing for bans on autonomous vehicles in the state out of concern that they will ultimately cost thousands of transportation jobs. The IDG believes that it only needs to preserve existing laws to guarantee a ban, but the UTA wants a 50-year ban on self-driving cars. Therefore, few of us might see driverless vehicles on New York roads, far less in Trinidad and Tobago. Are we seeing 21st century Luddites? The reality is that life from here on is likely to be one of factories full of robots and offices teeming with artificial intelligence devices. The trend seems to be heading to a gig economy with most people working for themselves. If alternative work arrangements like short-term gigs and self-employment become more ubiquitous, could that impact how and where we work and how we communicate and how cities are designed? If augmented reality gives workers access to vast amounts of data and assistance, will workers need to become more tech fluent for technology to deliver its promise? If the half-life of knowledge and skills necessary for employment continues to shrink, how can individuals, employers, education institutions, and society keep up? So therefore, what should we tell our children? We need to tell them that to stay ahead, they need to focus on their ability to continuously adapt, to engage with others in that process, and more importantly, to retain their core sense of identity and values. For students, it's not just about acquiring knowledge, but about how to learn. For the rest of us, we should remember that intellectual complacency is not our friend, and that learning, not just new things, but new ways of thinking, is a lifelong endeavor. A PwC report on the workforce of the future suggests that societies must be deliberate in the way they allow technology to develop. Governments, organizations, and society should work together to develop a responsible approach and policies that govern the impact of technology and operation on jobs, including a clear discussion on the ethics of artificial intelligence. Governments should engage with organizations developing the use of robotics and artificial intelligence at all stages of policymaking to create a pool of thought leaders with a deep understanding of the interplay between technology and its effect on society. Countries will have to look for innovative ways to address unemployment caused by technology while planning for an automated world. In an automated world, there will still be need for human workers working to develop technology, working alongside technology, or in narrow, very specialist or very human types of employment, the types of jobs that automation simply cannot compete in as yet. People must therefore work out where they want to be and get their skills in order. The skills needed for the future are not just about science and technology. Human skills like creativity, leadership, and empathy will be in demand. You must identify the skills you need and start to concentrate on how to build them and how to use them alongside technology. My recommendation is that we should embrace technology as a force for good. So in the future, could it be that a chef must be skilled in applied predictive analytics and inventory management in addition to menu design? Should a 21st century barman be skilled in counseling psychology and microprocess operations? Hopefully, we will soon find out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sheppard. You've definitely given us some food for thought. I know technology can be an intimidating area, intimidating thought for a lot of people. Especially when putting technology to the best or most efficient use. I can't say that you made it less intimidating, but I do look forward to our discussion on it after. So guys, I would like to pass you on to our final panelist before we start discussion, Dr. Paula Thomas.
Good evening, participants. Good evening, fellow panel members. This is really an exciting time for us. And I really must thank Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business for this initiative. I think it will really help the business community as we move forward. I would like to start with an example, a very practical example, of an experience I recently had. My mom has been in the elderly care facility for the last 18 months. And I got a telephone call from my aunt telling me that this new facility opened. Let's go and take a look at it. So we called, we made an appointment, and we got there. When I parked outside of the facility, I was highly impressed. I started off. Are we in the right place? This could not be an elderly care facility that I'm in. I mean, I am accustomed to elderly care facilities. I've been visiting my mom for the last 18 months. In one, I know what they're supposed to look like. Is this the right location? Am I in the right place? I got out, I rang the bell. Somebody came out to me, introduced herself, Christine, the owner of the operation. And she started to lead us inside. And as I got further and further in, I was more and more impressed. She said to us, I couldn't take you through all the rooms, but I will take you to the one room that we have available. because the other rooms were occupied. And of course, with coronavirus, she didn't want us walking through other people's rooms. When we got to the one room and I'm able to see inside the room, well, now I'm totally impressed. I'm bowled over. Is this an elderly care facility? So I sat very excited. Business psychologist head came up. What is going on here? So I started to delve into what is this? And as Christine started to talk to me, I understood what was happening. And this brings me to my first point. Christine practiced the art of pivoting. Christine owned and operated a guest house that targeted international tourists. Of course, we all know the borders closed. And she started to explain to me 8 months later, she realized no income, she had to do something. What did Christine do? Christine pivoted her business operation. And how did she do it? She integrated her hospitality experience into elderly care, into the elderly care facility. And I have to tell you, it is a mind-blowing operation. Going back to, I've had the experience for the past 18 months of what an elderly care facility in Trinidad looks like. And this was a whole different, it was a paradigm shift. Christine has repositioned her operation as a staycation for retirees. So I tell you that, and I tell you all. So my question then was, as I left Christine and I continued examining and examining, why or what makes this different? What makes Christine different from other business operations, small, medium, and large? Why are some of them still struggling? And it seems to me that this was a very smooth transition for Christina, because this is 6 months later, all her rooms are occupied, and I can tell you, she has been different. Continued my conversation with Christine, I understood what made it different. Christine was able to integrate her hospitality experience with elderly care. And I know it's going to create a paradigm shift in Trinidad and Tobago. So why is Christine different from the other businesses? So I continued trying to answer this question. What makes it different? So I went to some literature that I was recently very interested in. What makes work experience different for people? We can all attest that we have experienced people who approach work as pain, drudgery, and boredom, while others experience it as fun, excitement, and energetic. And then we have those who experience it as a complex mix of these two continuums, pain and excitement. So what makes that different? That was my question as a behavioral psychologist. Why is that different? And while I take my other two panelists' points, I would like to add further to it. This is what makes the difference. And I came up with this concept called work orientation. Work orientation is how our people are oriented to their work. Some people are oriented to their work as a job. All that it is about the money. It's only money I'm concerned about, nothing else. Others experience work as a career. I am concerned about, and my focus is promotional opportunities. Looking forward to the promotion so that I can eventually become the manager, get the big office at the corner or with the window or whatever it means for your organization. And other people experience it as a calling, where you are really called to your line of work and you are really focusing on the betterment of others and the betterment of society. And as I reflected on my conversation with Christine, I realized that Christine was really called to the hospitality industry. And as she was called to the hospitality industry, she was inspired and motivated to come up with a new option, a more viable option for her. She was inspired to pivot her operation to one that she will still be able to practice her hospitality experience, but also she found a new target market, hence making a much more viable operation. So I have conducted some research because, as I did mention to you, I was very concerned with what makes people different, how people approach work differently. And I have conducted research both in Trinidad and Tobago and the English-speaking Caribbean with this whole concept of work orientation. And the results revealed that individuals who are aligned to their work, who are called to their line of work, inculcate stronger work ethics than those who are not. And those results were consistent over both studies. So I am really believing that there is no other option for us now, business leaders. We really have. Yes, technology is important. Yes, your mission, your vision, your performance, all these things are important. But business leaders, I'm here to really urge you to not just hire people who are called to their line of work. Let us as a nation, as a business community, encourage people to find their true calling. And as they elevate to their true calling, they will enjoy a much better quality of life. The organization will be much more successful, and the society as a whole will benefit from this. So business leaders, I am here to suggest to us, one, to look for opportunities to pivot. And as we engage in pivoting, let us ensure that we develop recruitment, selection, motivation, and retention strategies to help our people so that they can be on calling. You know, we all heard this was news a few years ago, that the most problematic factor for doing business in Trinidad and Tobago is work ethic. We all know that. That's nothing new for us. And recently somebody called me and asked me to find out some information from the government service, you know, this postal code thing. And I said to them, I get a nervous reaction once I have to call the government service, anything to do with government service. And that nervous reaction is now trickling over to other private sector organizations. We are all experiencing the poor work ethic in our country. And I want to say to us, business leaders, we have to take the initiative to assist our people, to assist our citizens, to help them find their true calling so that we can emerge as a society, as a much more successful society. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. And I just want to add to that, you know, sometimes as organizations, we tremble at the thought of making that shift, pivoting, you know, and it may just require the organization to dig deep within. What do we have here? What competencies do we have in the organization that we can leverage on to make this change, to make this pivot? You know, what are some of the push and pull factors, you know, back to basics again? You know, what are some of the things that we can use, leverage on, you know, if we have to make this shift, you know, what is available to us? And again, it's just the fight in most organizations to make that change that really paralyzes a lot of the efforts, you know. So thank you for sharing on that. And at this point, I will open the floor to questions. I know there's a bit of delay. So in the meantime, I will throw out one of the first questions to anyone on the panel. Again, going back to monitoring and assessing performance, what advice would you give to our audience in that? Because I know it's something that a lot of organizations are struggling with. They don't have someone in front of them. How then do you monitor that you are actually working? How long you're supposed to work? Is that even a thing to consider? From what I'm hearing, workdays are longer now. And of course, because there are so many variables involved, children, parents, everyone is at home, so no one leaves for the day and comes back, while you sit and do your work. So anyone would like to take on that question? What do we recommend to organizations with regards to monitoring and assessing performance?
I'll take the first shot at it, and I think what they should do now is what they should have been doing all along, which is focusing on the output rather than input. In other words, even long before COVID, we should really have been focusing on what people achieve rather than what time they came to work and were just sitting by the desks all along by the workstations. Essentially, I'm plugging for performance management, as opposed to having the supervisor overlooking your shoulder and seeing that you are working. So just tell me what to do, how well to do it, when you want it by, and I do it on my own time, which is as applicable now, even more applicable now, as it was before. But that'll be my recommendation. So it's easy to figure out, I had to do something, did I do it? And it's this deliverable.
Yes, that's a good point, Stephen. Too often we business leaders just sit to time keep, and you're sitting at your desk and she's not at her desk, so she can't be working. Yes. And that goes to a second point I was deliberating on, the work values of the generational cohorts, how they differ. And I think that will account for your point, Stephen, because when we have different generational cohorts and they're not understanding, they will think that they're not working. They may be working on their phone, but the older generation will think, once I'm looking at my phone, I can't be working. So, these are some of the generational differences we will be experiencing in the workplace. So that's a really good point, Stephen.
I agree with both Stephen and Paula on that point. And that's part of the pivoting, or as I call it, the resetting that we have to do. What do we really focus on? What do we invite prospective employees to become a part of? And usually, the focus is on the job, the task, and not really on the mission. Finding purpose, as Paula alluded to, in what we do. So we have people who are not really connected with the business. And in today's environment, I find a lot of people are concerned about whether I will have a job, as opposed to what do we need to do to sustain the business. Of management, the orientation to what we do and how we do it, that's where it starts. Before we could even get down to the employees, what kind of environment are we creating so that people could come and bring their best selves to work every single day, even if it is in a virtual environment? We have to do the work of connecting people to the business of the organization. That has not been done. The promise of education is get your education, or should I say get your certification, get a job, and you will be all right. That isn't entirely true. We now have the business of helping people to adapt to the reality of what we are about. And then we can talk about what we manage. So I agree with Stephen that the focus needs to be on the output. But if you're on output, how do we measure output? We don't have a measurement culture. We just want people to be busy. So, we have to really get back to the drawing board and look at the parameters that allow us to be more effective and efficient in managing the environment. Yes, John?
Agreed, guys. And I'll just add one more thing, in addition to that focus on output, we do have to keep in mind, yes, the deliverables, but when are these deliverables going to be delivered? What's acceptable given the situation? And that's another thing with assessing performance. Because of course we all have deadlines. And that's one of the things that we now have to, in the midst of everything as well, in looking at outputs, look at the reasonableness of when things are due. We're no longer at the office where we have access to everything that we need, so how do we determine when something can be turned in, when something is due? Is it because this is the norm, or is it, what are we taking into consideration when we do that as well? Yeah. So I'll move on to another question, and this is actually from an esthetician. So good afternoon, panelists. I'm an esthetician in skincare industry. What would you suggest we do to deal with the new normal when we're allowed to reopen? And again, I'm throwing out to any panelists that would like to respond.
So there's some esthetician?
Yes, an esthetician.
Okay, so the reality is life has to continue. It has to continue safely. So personal services jobs have to continue. The reality is those types of jobs are higher risk. I mean, people will still have to go to the dentist, for example. You still have to go to the beauticians, the estheticians, and pedicures, manicures, and so on. But it's really a question of determining how to do them safely. It may very well be people like that may have to work like how doctors and nurses work. Every patient or every client you see, you discard your mask, you discard your gloves. It may be a high operating cost, but if you want to stay alive and not transmit diseases, even if you all get vaccinated, that may be the reality of life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also think that one of the things that this period allows us to do is to see how we can get closer to our customers. Stephen, you referenced the doctors, but look at how doctors and dentists and so have been doing it for some time, which is that the database of clients that they keep, that they can call you and remind you when appointments are being scheduled to be scheduled. You need to know your clients, the kind of services that they need, and what you can offer, and you have to find some way of connecting with the client, so that you help them. You have to become more solution focused. So we're not just providing the service, but we have to recognize that now is a time to offer solutions. And what value added that we're creating when we offer the solutions? Would they be willing to pay for the added value that you deliver? Those are some of the things that you would have to consider. But as Stephen says, life goes on, and you have to define your space in that environment.
Yeah.
I agree, Curt. I like that solution focused, and I think too many of us sometimes even guilty of this, where we may tend to criticize something as opposed to part of being the solution. So maybe that's something that we can all try to change in terms of our mindset. Instead of criticizing, be part of the solution, and maybe we get somewhere in that realm. So I have another question. We have quite a few questions actually. We have created the cultural ecosystem in which we live and all the challenges. What are the critical success factors to really pivot in a short space of time? What was reinforced over decades?
I think that people have shown that they can adapt. People can be resilient. And I don't want us to think that we have people who are so fixed in their ways that they can't. I like to encourage managers to look for the potential in their people, to engage people in a way that is an ongoing conversation. What are the struggles your people are encountering? How are they negotiating their own environment? We come to work and we see the work and we get them to work. But it's a lot more than that. Engagement means that we have to be invested in our people. And if we have to pivot, if we have to shift, it's not just we doing it, at the top and trying to drag the organization. It's the organization has to pivot. We have to come together to determine whether the value that we added before the pandemic is still the value that is needed after the pandemic, or even now. We have to embark on that search for solutions. So Paula brought up a very critical point in the adaptation of the guest house to elderly care facility. That is looking at what do I have and what solutions can I offer. We can't build on what we don't have. So the first thing we do is we assess our own competencies, our own capabilities. And then we look at the needs that might be out there. So look at with you and your staff and everybody else. How can we adapt to meet a new reality? And for me, that is what helps us. But know that people can and will. This is an opportunity for change. We're already changing. You're banking online when you used to stand in line. You have to do it. So don't miss the opportunity, because this is a wonderful opportunity to have that conversation for change. Yes?
Yes. Yeah. Good.
Yeah. And, one of the things I remember, it takes about 10 months to change one's behavior over time. But in an emergency, it happens instantaneously. Sometimes we need to remember the urgency of the situation, of what we're in, to change that mindset, to see that it is a necessity. And it's not going to change anytime soon.
Yes, that's a good point, Jan. Very good point, Jan. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So a question here again. How do you incentivize a non-profit board to pivot? What strategies can be used to create a sense of agency in this time?
I guess the fact that it's a non-profit board, they may feel as though there is no need to pivot, but they're right that they really have to pivot. And I think it's going back to their vision, and if it is that their vision is not being accomplished, and I think that will bring some urgency for the pivoting. If it is that they felt we're not accomplishing what we set out to accomplish, looking at, as Stephen said, our outcomes. What are we supposed to, or what did we set to say we're doing, and what did we do in the end? And I think this is what if you want to say, because it's the board she's asking about, how do we incentivize the board to move? And I feel you have to bring the data for them. You have to bring up the data and show them what is happening. We have to use the data to speak for us. And I think that is one of the first ways to get them, and most critical way to get them to move. The data speaks for itself. And what are we really doing? And also, if we come with a plausible option for them, I think that will also help them where we are, where we could see ourselves going. I think that should incentivize them to move.
So I'll move into the next question, just to be able to cover some more ground. We were all thrown into this changing environment, and workers must continue to function. while management grappled with the changing policies and new operational guidelines. How does management go about these changes in the face of old labor and industrial relations laws and union agreements?
The reality is tough one, but we still have the laws in place. I mean, we ought not to frequently break our laws. But as you said a while ago, John, in an emergency, we have to do things differently. And the unions and everyone is impacted by the same situation. So for me, it really common sense has to take over. And you cannot exploit people at the same time. You cannot put people into unnecessary danger. But we have to focus on what is required to be done, how best to do it safely. Is this a desired output? And let's agree and cooperate to get it done. We may have to, for example, today we are in a state of emergency. This is not a normal time. But yet work still continues to a large extent in many places. So it's really a matter of what makes sense in a particular situation, and yet not exposing people to unnecessary risk and danger. But we still don't have to break laws to get that done.
Sorry,
when we bring in it has a
It is not for in the bank where you have a teller on contract employment. That type of employment supposed to be permanent. You come in and you start as on your probationary period. You pass your 6 months probationary period, and then you are hired. This is a full-time job. And business leaders need to understand that when they bring in those types of employment arrangements, that seems to be kind of half-hearted. I don't want to take you on because I don't know. That is the kind of attitude that you are breathing. Now, I have a conflicting perspective. While teaching one of my classes, we were talking about the different types of employment. And this employee, while we on contract employment, we're working well because we want a permanent job. As soon as we get the permanent job, we know they can't fire us. So then we settle down and we leave all the work for the contract employers to do, or employees to do. So it brings a lot of turbulence in the work environment. And I really wish, if it's one call to action I have for business leaders in this country right now, from the government down, is to reset, pivot on this type of employment arrangement and get back to offering people permanent employment. They do that because they hope they could send home people when they want, but they don't understand they still can't send home people when they want. So that is my thing, that, yeah, it's not much, and I understand how it's impacting on the environment. So what I would like...
Oh, yes, definitely. But we have to be able to generate that level of flexibility, even now, so that there would be a group of people who come and they go, but not that you ignore the needs of the business, and to ensure the sustainability of the business, we have to look at models that facilitate rapid adaptation. If it is that we have to go back, and I'm talking now about businesses, to get into the schools which are on universities, which provide the resource for your operations, then we have to think about how do we reshape the thinking about work and what work is all about. But to say that we can do all permanence, it really saddles the business with to carry, in this case, an expense, if you will, that may not necessarily redound to the benefit of the business. So there has to be a blended approach for me, where there is a core of your long-term permanent employees, but there are levels of employees that would perhaps have to come in and go out as the situation demands. So that's, yeah.
I want to agree with you, but I just want to make one adaptation. It's not so much the employees, but the job. that the job, this is a permanent job, but this job or this might be a temporary project or project for a period of time. And that is when I'm agreeing with you. But some jobs are core to the organization. They continue, they have no timelines because that's core to the organization. So they should be permanent. But if a particular job is temporary or for a period of time because we're trying something, we're building something to end at a period of time, that is a contract position. And that is just what I would like to adjust.
So just as we negotiate what is emergent, yes, John? just as we negotiate what is emergent, right? That we have to be a little flexible in how we approach the structure of the organization, the restructuring, to ensure the sustainability of the organization.
Yes.
Over to you, John.
To meet the needs and ensure stability.
That's right.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. As I mentioned, unfortunately, we're out of time. But I just want the audience to know that we will be having some articles coming out from today's discussion. And at the end of those articles, you can post questions and, we can probably have some sort of blog going up. Because I know we did not get time to answer all the questions. I will also say, just an ending, thank you for joining us in our first of the Lockjack GSB Business Roundtable. And be sure to join us in our next episode on Thursday, 17th June, where we will be discussing modernizing industrial relations governance systems. And this session is going to be led by another of the GSB faculty, Dr. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.